It is live now, but one thing I wanted to mention: if you're not presenting, if you could just mute your microphone so there's not feedback, that'd be great. And then just make sure you turn it back on. To mute it, just go up to the top and hit the mute button. You'll have to see if it pop perfect. All right, go ahead.
Alex, would you mind pushing that present button up at the top so that it's bigger on the screen?
I'm not sure where it's at.
Let's see, push that down arrow again. Right there, yeah. Right there next to, you see the C and the A and the chat box up at the top.
Oh.
There we go. Okay. Our presentation is on tort law in healthcare. And next slide, please.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry. So what is tort? To put it simply, tort is basically just a civil wrong, not a criminal wrong, done to another person or property. As I was researching, I found 3 types of tort. The first one is intentional tort, and that is when you do something specifically with the intent of, are you guys still there? For some reason sorry, my screen went.
Yeah, we're still here.
Okay. So there are 3 types of torts. The first one is when you intentionally do something to cause someone harm or their property harm. The next one is negligence, and this is when a person is basically careless in their actions and it leads to the harm of another person or property. And as you read the material in the course this week, it's more specific in that it says that a reasonable person would do these things. And then the last one I found was strict liability tort, and that is basically the same thing as a negligence tort. The only difference is that the plaintiff does not have to prove that it was intentional. They only have to prove that the defendant is responsible and that injury resulted. And this has become the most popular type of lawsuit that occurs, especially in the healthcare industry. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you, sorry. Why is tort reform necessary? In recent years, there have been an increased number of lawsuits filed against large companies for huge sums of money. There is a belief that this practice has gotten out of control, and the intention behind tort reform is to stop lawsuits over ridiculous or frivolous things or things that don't have any merit. Another goal of tort reform is to limit the extent of the liability and the amount paid out to the plaintiff. Next slide, please. But is it really necessary? There are some benefits of tort. For instance, the arguments against tort reform is that it protects people, that tort actually protects people from wrongdoings caused by large companies who do not have the public interest in mind. Tort is also a way of keeping large companies in check and ensuring that they practice business in a way that benefits the common good and not just themselves. It also ensures that large companies pay sufficient compensation when they have caused injury. However, one problem that has been caused because of the increase in tort, because of the increase in lawsuits and because of the huge payout amounts, is that medical costs have gone up because basically the liability insurance for doctors and hospitals has increased substantially.
So tort in Texas, the tort reform state, is also what it's known as. The law was in effect in 2003. The law limits the cost of damages for pain and suffering to malpractice cases to $250,000. I misplaced a zero there. The law reduced the amount of charges to physicians, which has lowered insurance premiums by 46%. And it even said some nursing homes have gotten rid of insurance in some cases. The reform has increased new physicians in the state of Texas as well. And some of the stats for that is 28,000 physicians in the 9 years, 28,000 more, which is over 770 more a year than their 9 years before. And it's continued. And I thought this was kind of interesting. One aspect to remember is that lawyers have been greatly affected by this in Texas. Dallas defense lawyer Rob Robbie has seen his firm, Gwen & Robbie, shrink to less than half its former size since 2003. Reforms from the mid-40s to the low 20s in number of lawyers. His healthcare industry clients, doctors, hospitals, and nursing homes don't get sued nearly as much as before. Some of our significant clients, such as large hospital groups and similar entities, have little or no work to assign now, Robbie says. And the next quote, fewer cases filed, fewer cases to defend, and some firms have basically gone away. They just don't exist anymore. So you can see the two aspects of how the reform has shaped Texas in helping the hospitals and lowering premiums for insurance, but it has greatly affected the lawyers in Texas.
Okay, so the basic outline of this slide, Obamacare was the reform that Obama had, and neither of the Obamacare proposals now before Congress includes a medical malpractice reform provision, and basically the people want one in there, but it was omitted from Obamacare. Next slide. So during this whole process, the Republicans wanted to put a cap on the amount of money that people can sue the hospitals for malpractice, but Obamacare and Democrats wanted there to not be a limit so people could sue for however much they wanted. And this is a quote directly from President Obama: tort reform only saves $5 billion per year, not enough to matter. So why Obama didn't want to have the tort in Obamacare is because he didn't think it was too important to put in there. Mainly, Obama did not say much on the subject of tort reform. Later, speaking before a meeting of the American Medical Association, President Obama noted that there are legally vulnerable doctors and other healthcare providers, but that was the extent of his comments on the subject. The only reference to liability limitation or tort reform in the PPACA is a section regarding a demonstration project designed to provide funding to states developing ignition alternatives or substitutes. Next slide. So basically, there are many people that say Obamacare did not want the tort reform because a good chunk of Obama's re-election ran on money from lawyers. The White House, this was a quote from an article, the Obama White House stood in the way of limiting excessive payments to plaintiffs. Why? After all, would they bite the hand of the tort bar that generously fed them? So basically, without having a tort reform, the lawyers who are with these people who are suing the hospitals for unlimited amounts of money are making huge sum from that, and they were giving back to Obama in his re-election, and that's why he didn't want to have a tort reform in Obamacare, even though much of the public wanted it in there. Here's another quote that surfaced during this whole debate. When you go to pass a really enormous bill like that, the more stuff you put in it, the more enemies you make, right? And the reason that tort reform is not in the bill is because the people who wrote it do not want to take on the trial lawyers in addition to everyone else they were taking on.
That's it.
All right, great job. You guys covered the topic very well. Tort is a big deal. I don't know, $5 billion seems a lot to me, but I guess in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much. I don't know. Anyway, so I'll just start asking the question. We'll start with Alex. And the question is, what was the most interesting thing that you learned as you were studying this topic?
At first, as I started digging into it, I thought how great it was. Like, oh, this is amazing. It helps out insurance premiums. Like, it can help out the healthcare field in a lot of ways. But I didn't really see the effect that it has on like lawyers and jobs and in that situation. So there's kind of like there's never one thing that fixes all of it. So I thought that was kind of interesting that no matter what you pass, there's going to be good and bad.
Definitely. Great answer. Amanda.
What I found the most interesting about this was, as I was trying to find why Obama wouldn't want tort in the reform, I thought it would be, more to do with medical issues or like more affecting the public. But when I found out it was just like about money, it was surprising.
Great. All right, Chrissy.
Well, going into this, I really had no clue what tort even was. And so I found it really interesting that because you hear about people suing everyone nowadays for frivolous things like spilling their coffee in their lap and stuff like that. But I guess I didn't realize that was really real until I started researching and realized how much it has affected the medical industry and that's one of the reasons that it costs so much to go to the doctor or the dentist or any medical facility for that matter. So it's kind of, I don't know, I felt like it was a good thing to have tort reform, but like Alex said, there are pros and cons to everything. So
Definitely. All right. Thank you guys for that. I'm going to stay on the line really quick. I'm going to drop off here or stop recording for a second.